Hi, I'm Sarah, and today I'm going to tell you the story of Maya, a girl who thought family meant love until her parents taught her otherwise. The story is called My Aunt Left Me Everything, but the parents who abandoned me 10 years ago came back to claim it. I'm sitting in this enormous house right now trying to make sense of how my life flipped upside down in just a few days. My aunt's funeral feels like it happened in slow motion, and yet everything after has been a blur. People in black clothes whispered condolences, the smell of lilies. But the memory that won't leave me is this: 2 days later, while I was still trying to figure out what my future looked like, my parents, who had vanished from my life for a decade, knocked on the front door smiling like nothing had ever happened. To really explain how shocking that was, I need to go back to when it all began. 10 years ago. I was 8 back then. Just a skinny little girl in Alabama living in a house that never felt like mine. My brothers Lucas, 14, and Ethan, 15, were the stars of the family. My parents, Richard and Elena, revolved their entire lives around them. Football games, new cleats, private tutoring, everything was for the boys. Me, I was background noise. Fed, clothed, sure, but never seen. I learned early to keep myself busy reading in my room, doodling in notebooks, or just waiting for bedtime. At 8 years old, you don't always understand what's wrong, but you can feel it. One night in July, the air was so sticky hot I couldn't sleep. I tiptoed downstairs for water and froze when I heard my parents whispering in the living room. "We can't keep this up," Rich, my mom murmured. "The mortgage is drowning us. And if you lose hours again at the plant—" "I know, Lena." Dad interrupted, his voice tight. "But 3 kids, it's too much. We can barely afford the boys' fees, let alone college for all 3. Something's gotta give." The clink of ice in a glass. Silence. Then Mom's words that carved themselves into me. "Maybe your sister can take her. She's alone out there in Arkansas. She always asks about the kids. It could solve things." I didn't understand the full weight of it then. I just remember clutching my glass of water, heart pounding, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. A month later, school ended, and instead of a family trip, I was told we were driving to Arkansas to visit Dad's sister. My brothers got to stay behind for summer football camp. I sulked in the back seat, both dreading and curious about meeting this mysterious aunt. When we finally pulled into a long driveway, I stared wide-eyed at a house that looked like it belonged on TV, tall white pillars, sprawling yard, even a fountain. That was the first time I saw Aunt Caroline. She was taller than Dad, with silver-streaked hair tied back neatly, wearing dark slacks and a pressed blouse. Her eyes were sharp, but when she smiled at me, they softened. "So this is Maya," she said, kneeling slightly so we were eye level. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." It felt strange, like she actually saw me. Inside, we sat in a living room filled with gleaming wood furniture and polished glass vases. I still remember the faint smell of lemon polish and the ticking of a grandfather clock. My parents made small talk with Aunt Caroline over iced tea. Then, just an hour later, Dad stood up abruptly. "Well, we should hit the road. Long drive back." I jumped up too, ready to grab my backpack. But Mom's words stopped me cold. "Actually, honey, you're staying here with Aunt Caroline, just for a while." What? My voice cracked. "You'll have fun," Dad added quickly. "Cable TV, a big backyard." "But when are you coming back?" Soon, Mom said, 2 fast eyes darting toward the door. The goodbye hug was rushed, forced, and then just like that, they left. Their car rolled down the driveway, taillights fading into the dark. I stood frozen, clutching the door frame, not fully processing what had just happened. Aunt Caroline touched my shoulder gently. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get you settled." The room she gave me was bigger than my entire old bedroom, with a canopy bed and windows that opened onto a pool and garden. Under any other circumstances, I would have been thrilled. Instead, I felt a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. That first week was confusing. Aunt Caroline took time off work, showed me around, asked me questions about school and friends. She actually listened when I answered. No one had ever done that before. But as the days ticked by, I started asking her the same question over and over. "Did Mom or Dad call yet?" She always shook her head softly. "Not yet, Maya, but I'm sure they will soon." They didn't. Not that week. Not the next. By the end of the month, school was about to start again in Alabama. I panicked. Aunt Caroline, I need to go home. School starts in 2 weeks. She set her coffee cup down carefully, then met my eyes. Maya, we need to talk. My chest tightened. They're coming back, right? She took a deep breath. No, sweetheart. They're not. Your parents decided they can't take care of you anymore. They've given up their rights. I've adopted you. You'll live with me now. I can't describe what that felt like. Like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. Even though my parents weren't affectionate, they were supposed to be mine. Parents don't just hand you off. I cried until I had no tears left. For 3 days, I barely ate. Aunt Caroline sat with me silently, handing me tissues, never telling me to get over it. She just let me feel it. On the 4th day, something shifted inside me. If my parents didn't want me, then I didn't want them either. That was the day my new life began. And yet, even as I tried to build that life, a part of me always carried the memory of that driveway the moment they drove away without looking back. I didn't know then that 10 years later they'd return. Not with love, but with greedy smiles. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone actually wanted me. Aunt Caroline didn't just feed me and send me to school, she paid attention. She asked about my day and then listened, really listened to the answer. It was such a small thing, but for me, it was everything. She enrolled me in the local elementary school. I was terrified that first morning, clutching my backpack like a shield. But the class sizes were smaller than back in Alabama, and the teachers seemed to know every student by name. By the 2nd week, I'd made my first real friend, a bubbly girl named Leah, who lived 3 houses down. Leah invited me over constantly, and her mom treated me like part of the family. It was strange at first. I wasn't used to people remembering what I liked or saving me a seat at dinner. But little by little, I let myself relax into it. At home, Aunt Caroline created routines that made life feel steady. We cooked together on weeknights, usually something simple like pasta or stir-fry. On weekends, we'd watch old black and white movies. She'd laugh at my dramatic reactions and tell me stories about her childhood with my dad. The stories always surprised me. She'd describe him as a mischievous little boy, constantly getting into trouble but charming enough to escape punishment. I never understood how that boy turned into the man who left his daughter behind. Aunt Caroline never said a bad word about him, but she didn't glorify him either. She just let the facts speak for themselves. As I grew older, she started teaching me about things most kids didn't think about yet, like saving money, understanding bills, even how interest worked. At first, I rolled my eyes. Who cared about bank accounts when I could be spending my allowance on candy? But she was patient, and over time, I realized she was giving me tools no one else would have bothered to hand me. By the time I was 12, I had my own savings jar. By 14, I had a bank account. And by 16, I understood more about managing money than most adults I knew. I think she knew what she was doing, preparing me for a future where I couldn't rely on anyone else. We never spoke much about my parents, though. Once when I was around 14, she asked gently, "Would you like to see them again? I can arrange a visit." I didn't even hesitate. No, if they cared, they would have called by now. It had been 6 years without so much as a birthday card. I wasn't about to beg for crumbs of affection. Aunt Caroline just nodded like she respected my choice. That was the thing about her, she never pushed. She offered, and if I said no, she let it go. Life with her wasn't perfect. She could be strict about grades and chores, and she expected me to try my best at everything, but it was consistent, safe. And then just as I was finally starting to believe stability could last, the ground shifted again. It started small. She seemed tired, more often falling asleep on the couch after dinner. Then she began losing weight without trying. When she brushed it off as just stress, I pretended to believe her. But deep down, I felt the same knot in my stomach I'd felt that night in Alabama, overhearing whispers I wasn't meant to hear. One afternoon, she came home from a doctor's appointment with eyes that looked older than I'd ever seen them. "Maya," she said softly, motioning for me to sit beside her at the kitchen table. "I have some difficult news." My chest went tight. "What is it?" She folded her hands. "I've been diagnosed with cancer. It's serious." The world tilted. My first thought was panic. Am I about to lose the only person who ever chose me? The months that followed blurred together in cycles of hospital visits, chemotherapy, and days when she was too sick to get out of bed. I learned how to cook meals that weren't just pasta. I cleaned the house, drove her to appointments once I got my license, and tried to keep up with school at the same time. People at school whispered about how grown up I seemed, but it wasn't maturity, it was survival. For a while, the treatments worked. The cancer shrank, and she looked more like herself again. On my 17th birthday, she even baked me a cake, though she was exhausted by the effort. "I'm proud of you," she said, handing me a necklace that had belonged to her mother. "You're strong, you're smart, and you're kind. Remember those 3 things and you'll be okay." I didn't realize at the time she was leaving me her last lesson. By the time I turned 18, the cancer had returned. Worse this time. She could barely leave the bed. I tried to stay strong for her, but at night I cried into my pillow, terrified of what came next. She still tried to comfort me. On my 18th birthday, she whispered, "You're an adult now, Maya. You're ready. Even if I'm not here, you'll be okay." I wanted to scream that I wasn't ready, that I still needed her. But the words stuck in my throat. 2 months later, she was gone. The funeral was a blur. Neighbors, coworkers, friends from church people I barely knew came to hug me, cry with me, and tell me how much Aunt Caroline had meant to them. Her best friend Janet helped me organize everything. But when the service ended, I went back to the house alone. For the first time, silence didn't feel peaceful, it felt crushing. I kept thinking I'm 18. I have no one left. At least that's what I thought. Until the knock on the door 2 days later, the knock that brought back the ghosts of the past. 2 days after the funeral, I was still sitting in the kitchen with unopened sympathy cards piled on the counter when the doorbell rang. The chime echoed through the empty house, startling me out of my daze. Through the peephole, I froze. There they were. My parents, Richard and Elena, flanked by Lucas and Ethan, smiling like they were here for a holiday visit, not a decade-late apology. My hand shook as I opened the door just enough to speak. "Hi, Maya." Mom cooed, stepping forward as if nothing had happened. "Sweetheart, we were so sorry to hear about Caroline." She opened her arms for a hug. I didn't move. "What are you doing here?" Dad cleared his throat, already brushing past me into the foyer. "We came to check on you, of course. You shouldn't be alone right now." Lucas and Ethan followed, their eyes scanning the house with undisguised curiosity, like they were evaluating it for resale value. "Wow," Ethan muttered. "This place is huge." "Nice floors?" Lucas added, running his hand over the banister. It felt like I was being invaded. They made themselves comfortable fast. Mom sat on the living room couch, patting the cushion next to her. Dad wandered toward the kitchen, commenting on the smell of fresh polish. My brothers whispered to each other, chuckling. I stayed standing by the door, my pulse hammering. "You didn't come to the funeral," I said flatly. Mom waved a manicured hand. "Oh, honey, you know how it is. We had Ethan's promotion party planned. Family was flying in, catering paid for, canceling would have been impossible." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "So your son's party mattered more than your sister's funeral?" Dad's jaw tightened. "No need to be dramatic. We're here now. That's what counts." But I could see it in their eyes. They weren't here for me. They were here for what Caroline left behind. At first, they tried the gentle approach. "You shouldn't have to handle all this responsibility at your age," Mom said, her voice dripping with fake concern. Dad nodded sagely. "Managing a property this size, plus whatever assets Caroline left, it's too much for one young girl. You need guidance. Guidance from you." My voice shook, but not from fear, from anger. Lucas finally spoke up. "Come on, Maya, you're barely 18. This house alone has to be worth, what, $1 million, not to mention the money." He gave me a smirk. "That's a lot for someone with no experience." And there it was. The mask slipped. I tried to stand tall, though my legs felt like jelly. "Caroline left everything to me." "It's not your concern." Dad's face darkened. "As her brother, I have a right to part of the estate." "No," I said quietly. "You don't." Ethan leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You really think you can handle all this alone? College bills, taxes? Don't be naive." Mom sighed dramatically. "Sweetheart, we're your parents, your legal guardians. That means we're responsible for your inheritance, too." I clenched my fists. "You lost that right when you signed me away." Silence. Just for a beat. Then Dad chuckled low and condescending. "You don't know the law, Maya. In Alabama, you're not an adult until 19. You're still under our authority, which means..." He gestured around the house. "This, all of this, we'll manage it. My chest went cold. For a second, I almost believed him. Then I remembered the card Caroline's lawyer, Mr. Graham, had pressed into my hand at the funeral. "Call me if you ever need anything, Maya. Don't hesitate." I needed him now. Excusing myself, I slipped into Caroline's study and shut the door. My hands trembled as I dialed the number. "Mr. Graham." My voice cracked. "It's Maya. My parents are here. They're saying they're still my guardians and that they control the estate. They won't leave." His tone was calm, firm. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'll be there within 20 minutes. Relief hit me like a wave. Back in the kitchen, my family had raided the fridge. Lucas and Ethan were making sandwiches using Caroline's best china plates. Mom was sipping juice like she owned the place. Dad spotted me. "Feel better, sweetheart?" "We've been talking, and the truth is, this will all be smoother if you let us take the lead. You'll thank us later." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. I rushed to answer it. Standing there was Mr. Graham, briefcase in hand, his presence steadying me instantly. "Good afternoon," he said as he entered. "I'm Robert Graham, Caroline's attorney." Maya called me regarding uninvited guests. Dad stood up quickly, puffing his chest. "I'm Richard, her father. We're not uninvited. We're her parents and legal guardians." Mr. Graham raised an eyebrow. "Legal guardians? On what basis?" Mom jumped in. "She's only 18. In Alabama, adulthood starts at 19. We still have authority." Mr. Graham almost smiled. "Maya hasn't lived in Alabama for 10 years. She's a legal resident of Arkansas where the age of majority is 18. She became an adult on her last birthday. She doesn't need guardians." Dad's face flushed red. "But," Mr. Graham cut him off smoothly. "Furthermore, you relinquished parental rights when Caroline adopted her. You are not legally her parents anymore." Silence crashed over the room. Ethan finally broke it. "But she's still our sister." "Biologically, yes," Mr. Graham said evenly. "Legally, no different than strangers." Lucas's voice rose. "This is insane. What about the inheritance?" Mr. Graham pulled out a document. "Caroline's will is airtight. Everything house assets accounts goes to Maya. No one else." The room went still. I swear I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. "That's not fair," Dad shouted, his face purple now. "I'm her brother. Family should come first." That was my breaking point. My voice finally steadied. "Exactly. Family should come first. Where were you when Caroline was dying? Where were you when I was taking care of her, driving her to chemo, sitting by her hospital bed?" Mom stammered, We didn't know she was sick." "You didn't know because you never called. Not once. 10 years of silence. And now you show up after the funeral." Talking about responsibility. Mr. Graham closed his briefcase. "You need to leave, now, or I'll call the police and file harassment charges." Dad slammed his fist on the table. "You'll regret this, Maya." But they left. I stood at the window watching their car disappear down the driveway. My hands were still shaking. But for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in days. Power. The house was finally quiet again after they left, but my body was still buzzing like I'd run a marathon. I kept replaying Dad's words. "You'll regret this." It wasn't a threat shouted in anger. It was a promise. Mr. Graham didn't sugarcoat things either. As he closed his briefcase, he said, "Maya people who think they're entitled to money don't give up easily. Expect more contact. Don't respond. Save everything. We'll build a record." I nodded, even though my stomach churned. "You really think they'll come back?" He looked me straight in the eye. "I know they will." He was right. The very next morning, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Maya." Mom's voice crackled through the speaker, already breaking into sobs. "Honey, we made a mistake. We should have been there for you. Can we just talk, please?" I hung up. My hands shook as I placed the phone on the counter. 10 minutes later, another number lit up the screen. This time it was Lucas. "Look, Maya," he said, voice casual, like we were siblings who had just argued about chores. "You've got all this money sitting there and I've got plans. A real business idea. Just a small investment to help me get started. It'd be like family helping family, you know." I hung up again. By the end of the day, I had 6 missed calls. It didn't stop there. Every day brought more numbers, more voicemails. I started saving them like Mr. Graham had instructed. Ethan's voice came one night, slick and self-assured. You don't need all that cash, sis. I'm trying to buy a house with my fiancé. Why not help us out? Caroline would have wanted family to stay together. Another day. Dad's deep, commanding tone. We've been too soft with you. Stop being ungrateful and hand over what rightfully belongs to this family. If you don't, we'll take legal action. The worst were Mom's calls. She alternated between sobbing apologies and guilt trips. Do you really want to cut us out forever? We're your parents. You'll regret pushing us away. One day you'll have kids and you'll understand. Each message was like a hook sinking deeper into my chest, dragging up old wounds. The little girl inside me, the one who cried for 3 days when she realized her parents weren't coming back, still wanted to believe they cared. But then I'd listen to the part about money, and the illusion shattered. One night, Leah came over with a box of donuts, plopping herself on the couch. You look like you haven't slept in a week, she said. I haven't, I admitted. They won't stop calling. She frowned. Block their numbers. I tried. They just use new ones. She leaned forward. So what's the plan? You can't live like this. I thought of Aunt Caroline. How she never told me empty reassurances. How she always taught me to face reality even when it was hard. I'm documenting everything I said finally. Mr. Graham is building a case. Leah's eyes widened. Like a restraining order? Exactly. Saying it out loud steadied me. I wasn't powerless. I had choices. The calls escalated over the weeks. Sometimes it was anger. You're destroying this family, Maya, Dad barked in one voicemail. After everything we sacrificed, you owe us. Other times it was desperation. Please, Maya. Mom whispered in another. We're drowning. The house needs repairs and your brothers are struggling. Don't let pride stop you from helping your family. I learned to recognize the manipulation for what it was, recycled lines meant to guilt me into compliance. And every time I saved the message, date-time transcription. One night, while scrolling through the recordings, I paused on one from Lucas. You know what, Maya, maybe Caroline made you think you're better than us. But you're still that unwanted little girl Mom and Dad dropped off. Don't forget that. You'll come crawling back. I sat frozen tears, blurring my vision. The words pierced deeper than I wanted to admit. But instead of collapsing, I opened my journal, the one Aunt Caroline gave me when I was 15. On the first page, she had written, Don't let anyone else write your story, not even me. This pen belongs to you. So I wrote down Lucas's words not as truth, but as evidence. And then I wrote my response, I am not unwanted. I am chosen. At the end of the month, I sat in Mr. Graham's office, a neat folder of recordings and messages between us. He skimmed through the pages, nodding. This is enough, he said. We'll issue a cease and desist letter immediately. If they keep pushing, we'll take it to court and get a restraining order. I exhaled the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. Do you think they'll stop? He gave a thin smile. People like your parents, they usually stop once they realize the law isn't on their side. But even if they don't, you're not alone. You've done everything right. Not alone. Those words clung to me. The letter went out. For 2 long weeks, silence filled the space where their harassment had been. No buzzing phone, no guilt-soaked voicemails. For the first time since Caroline's death, I slept through the night. Leah came by with takeout one Friday, and we sprawled across the couch watching a bad reality show. At one point, she nudged me. You're different, you know, she said. Different how? Stronger. I mean, you've always been responsible, but now, it's like you're not just surviving anymore. You're standing your ground. I thought about it. She was right. A year ago, I would have crumbled under my parents' manipulation. But now I saw their tactics for what they were. Lies. But deep down, I couldn't shake the unease. Mr. Graham had warned me people who think money is theirs don't always give up. And as much as I wanted to believe it was over, a voice in the back of my head whispered, They'll be back. They always come back. For 2 blessed weeks, the silence held. No buzzing phone, no guilt-drenched voicemails. I almost let myself believe it was over. But then on a Thursday night, I pulled into the driveway after class and noticed something strange. The porch light was on. I hadn't left it that way. My heart thudded as I stepped inside. The faint smell of cologne my father's hung in the air. And then I saw it too of Aunt Caroline's crystal vases missing from the mantel. I dropped my bag and ran upstairs. My bedroom was untouched, but drawers in Caroline's study had been rifled through. Papers scattered across the desk like someone had been searching for documents. They had been here. I called Mr. Graham immediately. He answered on the second ring. "They broke in," I whispered, clutching the phone with shaking hands. "I can smell Dad's cologne. Stuff is missing." "Stay outside," he ordered firmly. "Don't touch anything. I'll call the police right now. Wait in your car until they arrive." Sitting in my car, headlights off, I wrapped my arms around myself. The once safe house felt like a trap. My parents hadn't just crossed a line, they'd shattered it. The police came within 15 minutes, lights flashing across the yard. An officer dusted the mantel for prints. Another took notes as I described the missing items. "Any idea who might have done this?" the officer asked. I hesitated, then forced the words out. "My parents. They've been harassing me for weeks. They think they're entitled to my aunt's estate." The officer's brows furrowed. "Parents, you're saying your biological parents?" "Yes, they gave me up 10 years ago, but now they're back. And they won't leave me alone." He scribbled more notes. "We'll open a report. Do you have legal counsel?" "Yes," I said quickly. "And he already knows everything." The officer gave a short nod. "Good. Keep documenting everything. If they set foot on this property again, call us immediately." That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every car that passed outside made my stomach knot. By morning, the fear hardened into something else: anger. They had turned the one place that felt like mine into a battlefield. I wasn't going to let them win. Sure enough, the calls resumed, this time nastier. "Dad, you called the cops on us after everything we've done for you. You're our daughter. This is our house." "Mom, we just wanted a few keepsakes, Maya. Caroline would have wanted us to have something. How could you humiliate us like that? Lucas, enjoy your little victory, but you'll regret it when you're drowning in bills. You can't handle this alone. Ethan, better think twice about dragging this through court. You don't want the family name dragged through the mud, do you?" Each voicemail felt like they were tightening a noose around me. But instead of deleting them, I saved every single one. Evidence. Leah noticed how tense I'd become. One afternoon, she caught me staring blankly at the untouched dinner on my plate. "You're shaking," she said softly. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them in the house, touching Caroline's things, laughing." Leah grabbed my hand. "Then stop playing defense. Fight back." Her words lit something inside me. For so long, I'd been reacting, crying, hiding, waiting. But maybe it was time to be proactive. The next day, I met with Mr. Graham in his office. "They broke into the house," I said flatly. "They won't stop calling. What can we do to end this?" He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "We'll file for a restraining order. With the evidence you've collected, the police report, and the voicemails, the case is strong. And if they ignore it, then we escalate to criminal charges. Harassment, trespassing, even attempted theft. The law is on your side, Maya. But you need to be prepared. Familial ties complicate everything. They'll try to play the poor parents card in court." I nodded. "Let them. I'm done being their victim." Filing the paperwork felt surreal. Reading my own words on the affidavit, harassment, threats, break-in, made it real in a way I couldn't take back. But it also felt like freedom. For once, I wasn't just surviving their manipulation. I was fighting it. Of course, my parents didn't take it quietly. The day after they were served the restraining order, my phone buzzed again. This time a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "You think a piece of paper will stop us?" Dad's voice snarled. "We're your blood. That lawyer of yours can't erase that. You'll see us again sooner than you think." He hung up before I could respond. My hand trembled as I set the phone down, but my resolve didn't waver. Because he was wrong. Blood didn't make family. Choices did. That night, I stood in Caroline's study, the moonlight spilling across her desk. Her favorite pen lay where she'd left it. I picked it up, feeling its weight. "Don't let anyone else write your story," she had told me. And I realized I was finally doing exactly that. They could try to invade, manipulate, or threaten. But this time, the ending would be mine to decide. The restraining order was supposed to bring peace. For a week it did. No calls, no shadow in the driveway, no cologne lingering in the air. But deep down, I knew it was the calm before the storm. It broke one Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when a loud bang rattled the front door. My heart leapt. Before I could even move, a voice boomed through the wood. "Maya, open up. We're not leaving until you talk to us." "Dad." I froze. They were here. Another voice followed Mom's high-pitched pleading. "Sweetheart, please, we just want to make this right. Don't call the police." Every instinct screamed at me to hide. But then I saw Aunt Caroline's necklace glinting in the sunlight where I'd left it on the counter. Her words came back. "You're strong, you're smart, you're kind." I wasn't 8 anymore. I wasn't powerless. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Within 10 minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled into the driveway. I stood at the window as the officers confronted my parents and brothers who had gathered behind them like backup singers in a twisted performance. Dad's voice carried, "This is our daughter's house. She's being manipulated by some lawyer. We're her family. We have a right to be here." The officer's reply was calm but firm. "Sir, you're in violation of a restraining order. Step away from the property immediately." Ethan shouted. "You can't treat us like criminals. She's blood." I pushed the door open, then stepping out onto the porch. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. "No," I said clearly, "you're strangers who abandoned me. And now you're trespassers. Leave." All 4 of them turned to stare. For the first time, I wasn't the little girl they could guilt or silence. I was the woman they'd underestimated. Dad's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, Maya. You'll be alone forever. No one will love you like family does." I met his glare. "Caroline loved me. Leah loves me. I have people who choose me. That's real family. And I'm done with you." The officers stepped in, escorting them down the driveway. Mom sobbed dramatically. Lucas cursed under his breath, and Ethan threw one last glare over his shoulder. But they didn't resist. The law wasn't on their side anymore. When the patrol cars drove away, silence settled over the yard. My chest heaved, not with fear this time, but with relief. Mr. Graham called later that day. "The police report will strengthen your case," he said. "If they try anything else, charges will follow." But I suspect this morning made things clear to them. "Clear enough?" I asked. He paused. "Desperate people rarely give up entirely. But you've proven you can stand your ground. They won't win." I thanked him and hung up, sinking into the couch. For the first time since Caroline's death, I didn't feel like the house was swallowing me whole. It felt like mine. Months passed. The calls stopped completely. My parents faded back into whatever lives they had in Alabama, probably blaming me for their problems the way they always had. Lucas and Ethan unfriended me on social media. Good riddance. I poured my energy into school studying finance, the same field Caroline had mastered. I wanted to honor her by walking the path she carved. Leah became my anchor, dragging me out for coffee study sessions and reminding me to laugh. Slowly, the weight on my chest eased. One spring evening, I stood in the backyard garden Caroline had loved so much. The flowers she planted were blooming again, roses, tulips, a stubborn patch of lavender. I ran my hand over the leaves, the necklace warm against my collarbone. I whispered into the quiet, "I did it, Aunt Caroline. I kept us safe." The wind rustled through the trees, almost like a reply. Looking back now, I realize something important. Blood doesn't define family. Choices do. Caroline chose me when no one else did. Leah chose to stand by me when things got ugly. Mr. Graham chose to protect me when I couldn't protect myself. And my parents, they chose greed. I used to wonder if I was worth keeping. Now I know the answer absolutely. So here I am, 18, living in this house, building a future on the foundation Caroline gave me. Not because I inherited money, but because I inherited her strength. And to you listening to my story, I want to ask, if your family tried to come back into your life after abandoning you, would you give them another chance, or would you shut the door for good?